Christmas Eve. I stood on my mother's porch after she slammed the door in my face, refusing to let me inside for dinner. Humiliated. Cold. Broke. Then a black town car pulled up to the curb. An elderly man, in an expensive coat, stepped out, holding a leather ledger. He looked directly at me and said my full name. I recognized him from old photographs gathering dust in forgotten albums. This was my grandfather, William, who supposedly died in a boating accident 15 years ago. He walked toward me and asked one chilling question. Who has been spending my money with your name on it? I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. This man was supposed to be dead. I'd been 12 years old when my mother told me he drowned off the coast of Maine. We'd never even had a funeral because they never recovered a body. And now he stood 3 feet away from me, very much alive, waiting for an answer I didn't have. I don't understand, I finally managed to say. My voice sounded weak, pathetic even to my own ears. William stepped closer. He had sharp blue eyes that seemed to cut right through the Christmas lights strung along my mother's gutters. Kenneth Morrison. Born April 7th, 1996. My grandson. The only grandchild I have. How are you alive? The question tumbled out before I could stop it. Long story. We don't have time for it right now. He held up the ledger. What we need to discuss is this. For the past 15 years, I've been depositing money into a trust fund established in your name. $200,000 initially, plus monthly contributions. The total should be around $2.3 million by now. My knees nearly gave out. $2.3 million? I lived in a 400-square-foot studio apartment in southeast Portland. I drove a 1998 Ford Ranger that burned oil and had a cracked windshield. I worked as an electrician for Gary's Electric, pulling wire through attics and crawl spaces for $16 an hour. Last month, I'd eaten ramen noodles for 11 straight days because I couldn't afford groceries after my truck needed new brake pads. There must be some mistake, I said. That's what I thought, too. William opened the ledger. Even in the dim porch light, I could see pages filled with numbers, dates, signatures. Someone has been withdrawing funds from your trust account for the past 3 years. Large amounts. $50,000 here, $75,000 there. The signatures on the withdrawal slips have your name. But I had a forensic document examiner look at them last week in Lisbon. They're forgeries. Very good forgeries, but forgeries nonetheless. My head spun. I never signed anything. I didn't even know this account existed. William studied my face for a long moment. Then he nodded, seeming to come to some internal decision. I believe you, which means someone close to you has access to your personal information. Someone who could forge your signature convincingly enough to fool bank officials. We both turned to look at the front door of my mother's house. Through the window, I could see her moving around in the kitchen. She'd refused to let me in tonight, said I wasn't welcome, said I'd made my choices, and now I had to live with them. I hadn't understood what she meant. We'd been estranged for 2 years, ever since I'd refused to loan her $5,000 I didn't have, but her anger had always seemed disproportionate to that relatively minor conflict. The withdrawals have been going to an account, linked to an address in Lake Oswego, William said. He showed me a page in the ledger. I recognized the street name. It was one of the wealthiest suburbs in the Portland metro area, where homes started at $1 million and climbed from there. My mother doesn't live in Lake Oswego, I said. She lives here, this house in Beaverton. It's nice enough, but it's not Lake Oswego money. What about other family members? Siblings? Cousins? I thought about my older sister, Diane. We hadn't spoken in over a year. She'd taken my mother's side during our falling out, said I was selfish for not helping family when they needed it. My sister Diane. She's a paralegal at some law firm downtown. She might have an apartment in Lake Oswego. I don't really know anymore. We're not close. William closed the ledger. Here's what's going to happen. Tomorrow morning, we're going to my bank. You're going to provide identification, and we're going to sort this out. We're going to find out exactly who has been stealing from you, and then we're going to make them pay it back. Every cent, plus damages. Why did you fake your death? The question had been building inside me since the moment I recognized him. His expression darkened. I had business partners who wanted me dead for real. Men who don't forgive debts or forget grudges. I had to disappear. It was the only way to keep breathing. I've been living in Portugal under a different name. But I kept tabs on the family, kept the trust fund active. I always planned to come back when you turned 30, reveal myself, give you the money to start a real life. But 3 months ago, I noticed irregularities in the account statements. Started investigating, and here we are. I looked back at my mother's house. 3 years ago, she'd called me in a panic. Said she needed me to come over immediately to sign some paperwork. Life insurance documents, she'd claimed. My father had died the year before, and she said the insurance company needed my signature as a beneficiary on some supplementary policies. I'd been grieving, exhausted from working double shifts to afford the funeral costs she said she couldn't cover. I'd signed everything she put in front of me without reading it carefully. She'd seemed urgent, stressed. I'd trusted her. 3 years ago, I said slowly, my mother had me sign a bunch of papers. She said they were insurance documents. I didn't read them closely. I just signed where she told me to sign. William's jaw tightened. How many documents? I don't know. Maybe 8 or 10 pages? She kept flipping through this stack, saying, sign here, initial here, date this one. I remember my hand cramping. She could have used those signatures to create templates. Practice forging your handwriting. Once she had enough samples, she could replicate your signature on withdrawal slips. He looked at the house again. We need to confront her. Tonight. Right now. She won't even let me in the door. She'll let me in. William's voice carried an edge I hadn't heard before. I'm still her father, whether she likes it or not. And I have evidence of felony fraud. She can talk to me, or she can talk to the police. Her choice. We walked up to the front door together. William knocked. 3 sharp raps that echoed through the quiet Christmas Eve neighborhood. I could hear carolers somewhere down the street, their voices carrying the melody of Silent Night across the cold air. My mother opened the door. When she saw William, her face went completely white. For a second, I thought she might faint. Hello, Patricia, William said calmly. We need to talk about Kenneth's trust fund, the one you've been stealing from. My mother's hand gripped the doorframe so hard her knuckles turned white. You're dead, she whispered. Clearly not. William held up the ledger. And you've been stealing from your son. $2.3 million reduced to less than $500,000 in just 3 years. Money I set aside for Kenneth's future. Money you had no right to touch. I don't know what you're talking about. But her voice shook, and she wouldn't meet my eyes. Don't lie to me, Patricia. I have bank records. I have the withdrawal slips with Kenneth's forged signature. I have the account information showing where the money went. An account linked to a property in Lake Oswego. I can have forensic accountants and federal investigators crawling through your finances by Monday morning. Or you can invite us inside, and we can discuss this like adults. She stood frozen for another moment, then stepped back. Fine. Come in. The house smelled like roasted turkey and cinnamon. Through the doorway to the dining room, I could see the table set for Christmas Eve dinner. 4 places. She'd been expecting company, and I clearly wasn't one of the invited guests. I felt a sharp pain in my chest, remembering all the holidays I'd spent alone in my apartment, eating takeout Chinese food and watching old movies. We sat in the living room. William remained standing, towering over my mother where she perched on the edge of the couch. I stayed near the doorway, still not quite believing any of this was real. How much did you take? William asked. I don't have to answer your questions. You abandoned this family. You don't get to show up 15 years later and accuse me of anything. The law disagrees. Identity theft is a federal crime. Fraud is a federal crime. Forgery is a federal crime. You're looking at 20 years in prison if we prosecute. So I'll ask again. How much did you take? My mother's facade cracked. Tears started running down her face, but they looked more like tears of anger than remorse. You always loved him more. Even when he was a baby, you paid more attention to Kenneth than you ever did to Diane or me. You set up this massive trust fund for him, but what did you leave for the rest of us? Nothing. You disappeared, and left us with nothing. That's not true, William said. I left money for everyone. Your mother received life insurance. You received survivor benefits. Diane had a college fund. Everyone was taken care of. It wasn't enough. Do you know what it's like to raise 2 kids alone after my husband died? Do you know how expensive everything is? Medical bills, mortgage payments, car repairs. I was drowning. And the whole time, I knew there was millions of dollars sitting in an account with Kenneth's name on it. Money he didn't even know about. Money he wasn't using. So yes, I took some. I deserved it. I earned it for all the years I suffered while you were off playing dead. How much? William repeated. She wiped her face with the back of her hand. About 800,000 over 3 years. I felt sick. $800,000. She'd let me struggle. She'd watched me work 70-hour weeks. She'd said no when I asked to borrow money for a security deposit on a better apartment. She'd refused to help when my truck's transmission was failing, and I couldn't afford the repair. All while she'd stolen nearly $1 million from an account she'd deliberately hidden from me. You're going to pay it back, William said. Every dollar. With interest. I can't. I already spent it. Then you'll sell this house. You'll liquidate your assets. You'll get a loan. I don't care how you do it, but you're going to make this right. And if I refuse, then I call the FBI. Tonight, Christmas Eve or not, financial fraud is serious enough that they'll open an investigation immediately. My mother stood up, her hands balled into fists. You can't prove anything. Kenneth signed those documents. He gave me permission. That's a lie, I said, finding my voice. You told me they were insurance papers. You never said anything about a trust fund. You signed them. Your signature is on file. Good luck proving you didn't know what you were signing. William shook his head. I have forensic analysis showing the withdrawal signatures are forgeries. Different pressure points, different pen angles. Kenneth's actual signature on his driver's license and social security card don't match the ones on your withdrawal slips. You practiced, but you weren't perfect. The evidence will hold up in court. The front door suddenly opened. We all turned. My sister Diane walked in, carrying a bottle of wine and a shopping bag. She stopped when she saw us, her expression shifting from surprise to calculation in the span of a heartbeat. What's going on? She asked. Your grandfather decided to rise from the dead and accuse us of crimes we didn't commit, my mother said bitterly. Diane set down the wine very carefully. She looked at William, then at me, then back at William. I see. And I assume you've been going through financial records? He has a ledger, my mother said. He knows about the trust fund. Does he know about all of it? Diane asked. My mother's face went pale again. Diane, don't. Don't what? They already know, Mom. Might as well stop pretending. Diane turned to face me fully. Yes, Kenneth. We've been taking money from your trust fund. Both of us. Mom needed it for the house and her medical bills. I needed it because paralegal work doesn't pay enough to cover law school loans and rent in this city. You were never going to use it. You didn't even know it existed. So we used it instead. It's called redistribution of family resources. It's called theft, William said. Diane laughed, a cold sound that raised the hair on the back of my neck. Theft? You want to talk about theft? How about stealing 15 years of a grandfather's presents from his grandchildren? How about faking your death and traumatizing your family? How about abandoning your daughter when she needed you most? You don't get to lecture us about morality. How much did you take? I asked her directly. She met my eyes without flinching. About 600,000. Maybe a little more. I stopped keeping exact track after a while. The math hit me like a punch to the gut. 800,000 from my mother, 600,000 from Diane. That was $1.4 million. But William said there should be 2.3 million total, and now only 500,000 remained. Someone had taken another 400,000. The numbers don't add up, I said. There's still 400,000 unaccounted for. Diane smiled, and it was the most disturbing expression I'd ever seen on my sister's face. Oh, Kenneth, always were good with numbers. Yes, there's more money gone. Want to know where it went? Diane, shut up, my mother hissed. Why? They're going to find out anyway. Diane pulled out her phone and started swiping through photos. Then she turned the screen toward me. Legal fees, private investigators, document specialists, security consultants. See, we knew there was always a chance you'd find out about the trust fund eventually. So we prepared. We've been documenting your life for the past 2 years, Kenneth. Every place you go, every person you talk to, every habit you have. We needed to know everything about you to make the forgeries perfect. And we needed leverage in case you ever tried to fight back. The photos showed me, dozens of them, getting coffee at the corner shop near my apartment, loading tools into my truck at work sites, playing pool at the bar I frequented on Friday nights, buying groceries, pumping gas, walking my neighbor's dog when she was out of town. Every mundane moment of my life, captured and cataloged. "You've been stalking me," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. We prefer the term maintaining situational awareness. We hired a private investigator named Caldwell, former police detective. He and his team have been keeping tabs on you. Nothing illegal about it. You're in public in all these photos. No expectation of privacy. Diane pocketed her phone. We also have witnesses who'll testify that you've talked about wanting to access trust funds, that you've seemed obsessed with money, that you have gambling problems and debt issues. All carefully constructed, all documented. If you try to accuse us of anything, we have a counter-narrative ready to destroy you. I looked at my mother. You knew about this? The surveillance? The fake witness statements? She wouldn't look at me. We had to protect ourselves. I'm your son. And you were always his favorite, she spat, pointing at William. He gave you everything and left us with scraps. So yes, we took what should have been ours in the first place. And yes, we covered our tracks. What did you expect us to do? Just hand over millions of dollars because you suddenly found out about them? William's voice was ice. You're both going to prison. I'm calling the authorities right now. He pulled out his phone, but Diane held up a hand. Before you do that, you should know something else. We have an attorney on retainer, Marcus Brennan. Maybe you've heard of him? He's represented senators, corporate executives, people accused of embezzling millions. He's very good at his job, and he's already prepared a defense strategy in case this situation ever arose. See, we're not going to deny taking the money. We're going to claim that Kenneth gave us permission, that he knew about the trust fund all along and agreed to let us borrow against it because family takes care of family. We have documents Kenneth signed. We have testimony from witnesses we've cultivated. We have financial records that can be interpreted multiple ways. Marcus is confident he can create enough reasonable doubt to prevent any criminal conviction. And even if by some miracle you win a criminal case, the civil litigation will drag on for years. By the time it's settled, legal fees will eat up whatever money is left. You'll get nothing but a Pyrrhic victory. The room fell silent except for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. I felt like I was drowning. My own family had stolen from me, surveilled me, built an entire conspiracy to cover their crimes, and now they were threatening to destroy me if I fought back. William looked at me. Kenneth, we're calling the police. These threats don't change anything. But I could see doubt in his eyes. Diane was right about one thing. The legal system could be manipulated. If they had a high-powered attorney and fabricated evidence, this could turn into a nightmare that lasted years. My sister walked to the door and opened it. You should leave now. Both of you. Merry Christmas. As William and I walked back to his town car, I heard my mother and sister laughing inside the house. Actually laughing. Like they'd just won some kind of game. I barely slept that night. William put me up at his hotel, a decent place near the airport. I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, trying to process everything I'd learned. My family had stolen nearly $1.5 million from me. They'd been watching me, building a case against me in the event I ever discovered their crimes. And they had a lawyer ready to twist the truth into something unrecognizable. The next morning, William and I went to the police station. It was Christmas Day, but the station never closed. We filed a report with a detective named Carson, a tired-looking woman in her 40s who took our statements and examined the evidence William had brought. This is serious, she said after reviewing the ledger. Identity theft, fraud, forgery. If your allegations are accurate, we're talking multiple felonies. I'll open an investigation immediately. Thank you, I said, feeling a weight lift slightly. I should warn you, though, these cases can be complicated. If your mother and sister have an attorney like Marcus Brennan, he's going to make this difficult. Brennan's known for getting guilty people off on technicalities. He's expensive, which tells me your family has resources. This won't be quick or easy. We understand, William said. We just want justice. Detective Carson made copies of everything, took detailed statements from both of us, and said she'd be in touch after the holiday weekend. We left feeling cautiously optimistic. The law was on our side. The evidence was clear. Surely this would work out. I went to work the next day. Gary's Electric had a rush job at a new construction site in Hillsborough, and I needed the overtime pay. My boss, Gary, was a decent guy in his 50s who'd hired me 3 years ago when I was desperate for steady employment. I found him in the office trailer, going over blueprints. Gary, I need to talk to you about something, I said. Sure, kid. What's up? I explained the situation. Not every detail, but enough so he'd understand if police came around asking questions. Gary listened, nodding, seeming sympathetic. That's rough, man. Your own family stealing from you? That's cold. Yeah, but we filed a police report yesterday. Detective said she'd investigate. Good. You deserve justice. Gary's phone rang. He glanced at the screen, frowned, and answered. Gary's Electric. This is Gary. I watched his expression change as he listened to whoever was on the other end. His eyes flicked to me, then away. His friendly demeanor evaporated. I see, he said into the phone. Yes, I understand. Thank you for letting me know. He hung up and stared at me for a long moment. What's wrong? I asked. That was Detective Reyes. Portland Police Financial Crimes Unit. He wants to ask you some questions. Okay, I can call him back. No, Kenneth. He's coming here. With his partner. They're about 10 minutes away. A cold feeling spread through my chest. Why would they come here? I already gave my statement to Detective Carson. Gary crossed his arms. He said something about a counter-complaint. Said your mother and sister filed a report claiming you've been stealing from a trust fund they manage. Said there's evidence you forged documents. That's insane. They're the ones who stole from me. Maybe so. But now there's 2 competing stories, and the cops have to investigate both. The detectives arrived 15 minutes later. Reyes and his partner, a younger man named Torres, asked me to come down to the station voluntarily for questioning. I agreed, figuring I had nothing to hide. William met us there. In the interrogation room, everything felt wrong. These detectives didn't seem interested in my version of events. They kept pushing me about the documents I'd signed 3 years ago, asking why I couldn't remember exactly what they said, suggesting that maybe I'd known about the trust fund all along, and was now trying to frame my family. We spoke with Patricia Morrison and Diane Morrison this morning, Detective Reyes said. They provided documentation showing that you were aware of the trust fund. They claim you agreed to let them borrow money from it for family expenses. That's a lie, I said. I didn't know the trust fund existed until 2 days ago. Then how do you explain this? Torres slid a document across the table. It was a form labeled Trust Fund Access Authorization. At the bottom was my signature, my actual signature, not a forgery. This document, dated 3 years ago, gives your mother and sister permission to make withdrawals from your trust account for family purposes. I stared at it, my mind reeling. I never signed that. I signed something, but she told me it was life insurance paperwork. So you admit you signed it? Yes, but I didn't know what it actually was. She lied to me. Or, Reyes said, you knew exactly what it was, and now you're experiencing buyer's remorse. Maybe you're angry that they spent the money in ways you don't approve of. So you're making false accusations. No, that's not what happened. Torres pulled out another document. We also have testimony from 3 witnesses who claim you've talked about having access to family money. Tyler Schmidt, your friend, says you mentioned a trust fund to him last year. Tyler? No, I never talked to Tyler about any trust fund. I didn't know about it. That's not what he says. We have his signed statement. The interview went on for another hour. Every answer I gave seemed to make things worse. They'd twist my words, point out inconsistencies in my memory of events from 3 years ago, suggest that I was the one committing fraud. By the time they let me go, I felt like the guilty party even though I'd done nothing wrong. Outside the station, William was waiting. He looked shaken. They questioned me too. Asked me if I had any proof you didn't know about the trust fund. Asked me why I didn't establish better security measures if the money was really meant only for you. They made it sound like this was my fault for being careless. This is exactly what Diane said would happen. They're flipping the narrative. We need a lawyer, William said. A good one. We spent the rest of that day trying to find an attorney willing to take the case. But it was December 26th. Most law offices were closed for the holiday week. The few attorneys we reached said they couldn't take on a new client until after New Year's. One lawyer said she wouldn't touch a case involving Marcus Brennan with a 10-foot pole. The next morning, I woke up to police pounding on my apartment door. They had a search warrant. They went through everything. My laptop, my phone, my financial records, my mail. They took boxes of documents, my computer, even my work tablet. What are you looking for? I asked. Evidence of fraud, Reyes said. Your sister claims you've been running a gambling operation. Says you have secret bank accounts. We're checking. I don't gamble. I don't have secret accounts. You won't find anything. But 3 hours later, they found something anyway. Or claimed to. Reyes emerged from my bedroom holding a key. What's this? I don't know. I've never seen it before. It's a key to a safety deposit box. Registered in your name at Columbia Bank. Box number 317. My stomach dropped. I don't have a safety deposit box. The bank records say otherwise. We're going to check it out. If we find what I think we're going to find, you're in serious trouble. They took me with them to the bank. The manager confirmed that box 317 was registered to Kenneth Morrison, opened 4 months ago. I insisted I'd never been to that bank, never opened a box, but they didn't believe me. The manager used a master key to open it. Inside, $20,000 in cash, forged documents with my signature, fake IDs with my photo but different names. I didn't put this here, I said. Someone's framing me. Right, Torres said. Someone just happened to open a box in your name, using your identification, and filled it with evidence of fraud. That makes perfect sense. They arrested me right there in the bank lobby, read me my rights, put me in handcuffs, walked me past customers and employees who stared like I was some kind of monster. I spent the next 6 hours in a holding cell before William posted bail. That evening, sitting in William's hotel room, we tried to piece together how this had happened. They must have stolen my identity completely, I said. Used those signatures I gave my mother 3 years ago to create fake IDs, opened accounts and boxes in my name, planted evidence. Diane, William said grimly. She works as a paralegal. She'd know how to do all this, how to create a paper trail that makes you look guilty. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Drop the accusations, or it gets worse. We have more evidence ready to plant. Back off while you still can. I showed William. He shook his head. Don't respond. We're not backing down. But the next morning brought more bad news. An official letter from the IRS. I was being audited. They claimed I hadn't reported income from trust fund distributions for the past 3 years. Owed over $300,000 in back taxes and penalties. They filed fake tax returns in my name, I realized, reading through the notice. They've been claiming I received this money, so now the IRS thinks I owe taxes on it. William looked defeated for the first time since I'd met him. Even if we prove you're innocent of the fraud charges, you're still liable for the taxes. The IRS doesn't care who actually received the money. If it was distributed from an account in your name, you owe taxes on it. I can't pay $300,000. I don't have it. I know. And they'll place liens on any assets you have. Garnish your wages. You'll be paying this off for the rest of your life. I thought about my mother and Diane, safe in their homes, protected by Marcus Brennan's legal maneuvering. They'd stolen from me, framed me, and destroyed my life. and they were going to get away with it. "There's more," William said quietly. He looked pale, older somehow. "I got a call from my bank in Lisbon this morning. The trust fund was joint property with my wife, Sophia. She's furious about this entire situation. Says I never should have come back to America. She's threatening divorce. If she follows through, she can claim half of what's left in the trust. That's another $250,000 gone. You won't see any of it." I dropped my head into my hands. In less than a week, I'd gone from being oblivious to being destroyed. My family had taken everything, and there was nothing I could do about it. The next few days blurred together in a haze of legal nightmares and financial devastation. I wasn't arrested again, but the police made it clear I was still under investigation. They'd confiscated my electronics, which meant I couldn't access my banking apps, couldn't check email, couldn't do anything that required a computer. I returned to my apartment to find an eviction notice taped to my door. My landlord, a perpetually grumpy man named Carson, stood in the hallway waiting for me. "Kenneth, we need to talk." I saw the notice. "What's this about?" "My rent's paid through January. I got a call from the police. They said you're under investigation for fraud. I can't have criminals living in my building. It's a liability issue. I'm not a criminal. The charges are false. My family is framing me. That's what everyone says. Look, I'm sorry, but you need to be out by January 15th. That gives you 2.5 weeks. I'm being generous. Carson, please. I don't have anywhere else to go." "Not my problem. You should have thought about that before you got mixed up in whatever this is." He walked away, leaving me standing in the hallway with the eviction notice crumpling in my hand. I went to work the next morning, hoping to lose myself in physical labor. Pulling wire through walls didn't require thinking, and thinking was the last thing I wanted to do. But when I arrived at the job site, Gary was waiting for me at the gate. "Kenneth, I can't let you on site today." "Why not?" "I'm not late. I'm ready to work. I talked to my insurance company. They say having someone under criminal investigation on the crew is a liability. If something happens, if there's an accident or theft or anything, they won't cover it. I can't risk that. Gary, I need this job. I need the money. I'm getting evicted." He looked genuinely sad. "I know, kid, and I feel terrible about this. But I have a business to run. I have other employees who depend on me. I can't jeopardize everything for one person, even if I believe you're innocent, which I do, for what it's worth. So I'm fired. Suspended without pay until your legal situation is resolved. If you're cleared, you can come back. But until then, I can't use you." I drove away from that job site knowing I wouldn't be coming back. Even if I was eventually cleared, Gary would have replaced me by then. The electrical trade was competitive. Workers were a dime a dozen. I was expendable. That evening, I met Tyler for a beer. Or tried to. He'd been my best friend for 5 years, ever since we'd met playing basketball at the community center. But when I showed up at the bar where we always met on Thursdays, he was already there with 2 other guys I vaguely recognized. When he saw me, his expression went cold. "Tyler, we need to talk." "I don't think so, man. The police said you gave them a statement. Said I talked to you about having a trust fund. That's not true. You know it's not true." He wouldn't meet my eyes. "I told them what I remembered." "You lied." "Why would you lie about me?" One of the other guys stood up. "Maybe you should leave, Kenneth. Tyler doesn't want to talk to you. This is between me and Tyler, and I'm telling you to leave." I looked at Tyler, waiting for him to say something, to defend me, to tell these guys I was his friend. But he just stared at his beer bottle, saying nothing. I left, walked back to my truck, which I'd parked 2 blocks away. Someone had spray-painted "Thief" across the driver's side door in bright red letters. The paint was still wet, dripping down onto the pavement. I checked my bank account when I got home. It showed a balance of 0. Everything frozen due to the IRS audit and the ongoing fraud investigation. I had $47 in cash in my wallet. That was it. That was all the money I had in the world. William called that night. "We need to meet. Tomorrow morning. It's important." We met at a diner near his hotel. He looked worse than I'd ever seen him. Gray-faced, exhausted, like he'd aged 10 years in the past week. "I received a letter from the IRS," he said. "They're auditing me too now, claiming I facilitated tax evasion by setting up the trust fund in a way that allowed others to access it without proper reporting. They're saying I owe penalties. Could be as much as $500,000. This is insane. They're punishing you for being the victim. That's not the worst part." He pulled out his phone and showed me an email. It was from Sophia, his wife in Portugal. The message was short and brutal. "Come home immediately, or I'm filing for divorce and claiming half of everything." "She means it," William said. "I've been married to her for 12 years. She warned me not to come back to America. Said my family here was toxic and would destroy me. She was right." "What are you going to do?" "I don't know. If I stay and fight this, I lose my marriage and half my assets. If I go back to Portugal, you're on your own. I don't have the money to fight a legal battle on 2 continents." We sat in silence for a while. The waitress refilled our coffee twice, before either of us spoke again. "There's something else you need to know," William finally said. "The trust fund. It's not just my money. Sophia's family contributed significantly. Her father made a fortune in textile manufacturing. When we got married, he invested in the trust as a gesture of goodwill. If Sophia divorces me, her lawyers will claim that money belongs to her family, not to you. They'll tie it up in Portuguese courts for years. You'll never see a cent. So even if we win the fraud case against my mother and Diane, there's no money to recover. Probably not. By the time all the legal fees and tax penalties and divorce settlements are paid, there won't be anything left. They've won, Kenneth. They've stolen your future. And there's nothing we can do about it." My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number again. "Last chance. Drop this now, or you go to prison. We have more evidence. We've been planning this for years. You can't win." I showed William. He closed his eyes. "Maybe they're right. Maybe we can't win. So what do I do?" "Marcus Brennan sent me a letter. He's offering a deal. You plead guilty to a reduced charge of filing false police reports. You serve 18 months in county jail. In exchange, Patricia and Diane drop all civil claims, and they'll work with the IRS to reduce your tax liability. You'll still owe about $100,000, but that's better than $300,000. If I plead guilty, I'll have a felony record. I'll never work as an electrician again. Most contractors won't hire convicted felons. I know. But if you don't take the deal, and this goes to trial, Brennan will bury you. He has fabricated evidence, false witnesses, and unlimited resources. You'll lose and face 8 to 12 years in prison. 18 months or 12 years. That's your choice. There has to be another way. If there is, I don't see it." William stood up, dropped some cash on the table for the coffee. "I'm flying back to Portugal tomorrow. I'm sorry, Kenneth. I thought I could help you. I thought we could fix this. But they planned too well. They covered every angle. You're on your own now." He walked out of the diner, leaving me sitting there with $47 in my wallet and a choice between bad and worse. That night, I sat in my truck in an empty parking lot overlooking the Willamette River. I wrote a note on a napkin, explaining that I wasn't guilty, that my family had destroyed me, that I couldn't see a way forward. I started the engine, put the truck in drive, aimed for the bridge railing. My phone rang. I almost didn't answer. But something made me look at the screen. Unknown number. "Hello? Kenneth?" "It's Heather." "Heather. My ex-girlfriend from 2 years ago. We dated for 6 months. Nothing serious. But it had ended amicably. I hadn't talked to her since." "Heather? How did you get this number?" "I never deleted your contact. Listen, I need to see you. Tonight. Right now. It's about your family and the trust fund. I have information you need." "What kind of information?" "Not over the phone. Meet me at the parking lot behind Powell's bookstore. 20 minutes. Come alone." She hung up before I could respond. I sat there, engine running, staring at the river. Then I put the truck in reverse and drove toward downtown Portland. Heather was waiting when I arrived, pacing near her car. She looked terrified, kept glancing around like she expected someone to jump out of the shadows. "What's going on?" I asked. "I'm so sorry, Kenneth. I'm so sorry." "Sorry for what?" She started crying. "I was never really your girlfriend. Diane paid me $5,000 to date you, to get close to you, to learn everything about you. Your habits, your schedule, where you kept important documents. I'm an accountant. I helped them understand your finances. I helped them forge the documents. I didn't know it would go this far. I thought it was just going to be a one-time thing, a quick payday. But they've been using the information I gave them to frame you. And now you're going to prison, and it's my fault." I felt like someone had punched me in the chest. "You were working for them the whole time? Everything between us was fake?" "Not everything. I did care about you. I felt terrible about what I was doing. That's why I'm here now. I found something at Diane's office. Evidence that proves you're innocent. Original documents that show the trust fund was always meant only for you. Emails between your mother, Diane, and Marcus Brennan, planning the whole fraud. I made copies." She pulled a manila envelope from her car and handed it to me. Inside were dozens of pages, bank documents, emails, notes in Diane's handwriting, outlining the entire scheme. "This is it," I said, flipping through the pages. "This proves everything. The originals are in a storage unit I rented under a fake name. Here's the key and the address." She handed me a small key and a piece of paper. "You need to go to the police with this tomorrow morning. Show them everything. This will clear you." "Why are you doing this now?" "Because I saw you that day, at the police station, when they arrested you at the bank. You looked so broken. And I realized I helped do that to you. I've been having nightmares for weeks. I can't sleep. I can't eat. I just keep thinking about what I did. I have to make this right, even if it means I go to prison too. You should come with me to the police. You can testify." "I will. But first I need to make sure my family is safe. Diane has connections. She might try to retaliate. I need to get my parents somewhere secure before I blow this whole thing open." We agreed to meet at the police station the next morning at 8. She got in her car and drove away. I watched her taillights disappear around a corner, then got back in my truck. But something felt wrong. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I followed the route Heather had taken, staying a few blocks behind. Sure enough, another car was tailing her. A black sedan with tinted windows. I called Heather to warn her, but she didn't answer. I pushed my truck faster, trying to catch up, but I was too far behind. The black sedan pulled alongside Heather's car, on a stretch of road near an industrial area. I saw the sedan swerve, ramming into Heather's vehicle. Her car spun, hit a concrete barrier and came to a stop. The sedan drove away at high speed. I dialed 911 as I raced toward the crash. "There's been an accident. Industrial area off Nido Parkway near the steel yard. Car versus concrete barrier. Driver's not moving. Send an ambulance." I reached Heather's car and jumped out. She was slumped over the steering wheel, blood running down her face. But she was breathing. I could see her chest rising and falling. I heard footsteps behind me. Turned to see Diane walking toward me from her car, which was parked about 50 yards away. She had her phone out, recording. "This is all being recorded, Kenneth," she called out. "You ran her off the road. You tried to kill her because she was going to testify against you. I saw the whole thing. You're insane. You did this. You ran her off the road. That's not what the police are going to think." She kept walking toward me, phone raised. "You're a desperate man facing prison time. You're eliminating witnesses. Everyone will believe it. Marcus has already prepared statements from people who will say you've been making threats." Sirens wailed in the distance. Police were coming. Diane was going to tell them I'd caused the crash. She was going to frame me for attempted murder. I looked at Heather's car. Saw something on the windshield. A dash cam. Still running. Still recording. I yanked open the passenger door and reached for the dash cam. Diane screamed, "He's tampering with evidence! Stop him!" But I got it. Pulled the dash cam free and held it against my chest as police cars screeched to a stop around us. Officers jumped out, weapons drawn. "On the ground. Now!" I dropped to my knees, hands up, but kept the dash cam pressed against my body. They pulled me down, handcuffed me, searched me, found the dash cam. That's evidence, I said. It recorded everything. It shows Diane ran her off the road. It proves I'm innocent. But Diane was already talking to the officers, crying, saying I'd been chasing them both, saying I'd run Heather off the road, and then tried to destroy the evidence. They loaded me into a police car as paramedics worked on Heather. Detective Reyes appeared at the car window. Kenneth Morrison, you're under arrest for assault with a deadly vehicle and attempted murder. You have the right to remain silent. The dash cam, I said. Watch the dash cam. It'll prove I didn't do this. We'll review all evidence. But right now, you're going to jail. They drove me downtown, processed me, took my fingerprints and mugshot, put me in a cell. Bail was set at $500,000. I couldn't even pay $500. I wasn't getting out. I sat on the concrete bench in that cell, holding the manila envelope Heather had given me. They'd let me keep it. Probably figured it was just junk mail or something. But inside were the documents that could save me. If anyone ever looked at them, if anyone believed me, if the dashcam footage showed what really happened, and if Heather survived to tell the truth, all I could do was wait and hope that for once, just once, something would go right. I spent 4 days in county jail before my public defender finally came to see me. Her name was Amanda Burke, and she looked fresh out of law school, overwhelmed and underprepared. She sat across from me in the gray interview room with a manila folder that I assumed contained my case file. Mr. Morrison, I've reviewed the charges against you. This is serious. Assault with a deadly vehicle, attempted murder, tampering with evidence. The prosecutor is asking for 20 years. I didn't do it. My sister ran Heather off the road. There's a dash cam. It recorded everything. I know about the dash cam. The police reviewed the footage. Hope flared in my chest. Then you know I'm innocent. It's not that simple. The footage shows 2 cars on the road. It shows a collision. But the angle doesn't clearly show which car initiated contact. Marcus Brennan has filed a motion to suppress the evidence, claiming you illegally seized it from an accident scene, contaminating the chain of custody. I was trying to preserve evidence. That's one interpretation. Mr. Brennan argues you were tampering. There's a hearing scheduled for next week. If the judge suppresses the dashcam footage, we have no defense. I wanted to put my fist through the wall. What about the documents Heather gave me? The ones proving my family committed fraud? I have them here. She tapped the folder. They're potentially exculpatory for the fraud case, but they don't help with the attempted murder charge. In fact, Mr. Brennan is arguing they provide motive. He says you were angry about the fraud and tried to kill Heather because she was involved. She was trying to help me. She felt guilty and was going to testify. According to Mr. Brennan, she was trying to distance herself from you. He has statements from people saying you'd been harassing her, that you blamed her for your problems. What people? Who said that? Amanda consulted her notes. Tyler Schmidt, Gary Holbrook, a woman named Jessica Chen, who works at the coffee shop you frequent. All of them say you've been increasingly erratic and angry over the past few weeks, making threats, talking about revenge. They're lying. My sister got to them somehow, paid them off or threatened them. Can you prove that? No. But I know it's true. Amanda sighed. Mr. Morrison, I believe you. I do. But belief isn't enough. We need evidence, hard facts. And right now, the facts aren't in our favor. My advice is to consider a plea deal. I can probably get the prosecutor down to 10 years if you allocate. Allocate means admit guilt. Yes, I won't do that. I'm innocent. Then we go to trial. And I have to warn you, our chances aren't good. Marcus Brennan is one of the best defense attorneys in the state. He's been retained by your family, and he's going to destroy you on the stand. He'll paint you as a desperate, violent criminal. The jury will believe him because he's very good at his job. I dropped my head into my hands. Every door kept slamming shut. Every path led to prison. The hearing on the dashcam evidence happened a week later. I was transported from jail to the courthouse in shackles, wearing an orange jumpsuit. William was there, sitting in the gallery. He'd stayed in Portland after all, though he looked like it was killing him. He mouthed, "I'm sorry," when I looked at him. The hearing lasted 3 hours. Amanda argued that I'd acted properly in securing the dashcam. Marcus Brennan countered with legal precedents about evidence tampering and chain of custody. He was polished, confident, devastating. Amanda seemed like a college student debating a professor. The judge ruled in Brennan's favor. The dashcam footage was suppressed, inadmissible at trial. I was led back to the jail transport van, knowing I'd just lost my only chance at proving my innocence. But that evening, something unexpected happened. A guard came to my cell and said I had a visitor. It was William, and he looked different. Energized, almost excited. "Kenneth," Sophia called me. "She saw the news coverage about your arrest. The story made international headlines because of the trust fund angle, the wealthy grandfather, the family betrayal. It's all over European media." Sophia was angry at first, but then something clicked for her. She realized you were telling the truth. That my daughter and granddaughter are monsters. And she told me something I didn't know. "What?" "She's been keeping records. Sophia is meticulous about finances. When I set up the trust fund, I used money from both my accounts and her family's investment accounts. She has the original documentation showing that the trust was established solely for your benefit. No one else was supposed to have access. Ever. Those documents have been in a safe in Portugal this whole time. Can she send them? She's flying here, tomorrow, with the originals. And she's bringing her family's attorney, a man named Eduardo Silva. He specializes in international financial fraud. He's agreed to work with Amanda on your case." "Why would he do that?" "Because Sophia's family hates fraud. Her grandfather lost his business to corrupt partners 50 years ago. It's a point of honor for them. They help victims of financial crimes. Eduardo is coming pro bono. And he's bringing muscle. He has connections with Interpol, with the FBI, with prosecutors who specialize in cross-border fraud cases. Marcus Brennan might be good, but Eduardo is better." For the first time in weeks, I felt something like hope. Sophia and Eduardo arrived the next day. Sophia was a striking woman in her early 60s, impeccably dressed, with sharp, intelligent eyes. Eduardo was younger, maybe 40, but he radiated competence. They visited me in jail that afternoon. Sophia hugged me, which surprised me. "I'm sorry I doubted you," she said in accented English. "William told me what they did. It's unforgivable." Eduardo got straight to business. "I've reviewed your case. The fraud charges, the attempted murder charge, all of it. Your sister is very clever. She's built a sophisticated framework of false evidence. But she made mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. We're going to find them. The dashcam footage was suppressed. I know. But there are other ways to prove what happened. Traffic cameras, surveillance from nearby businesses, cell phone tower data showing where everyone was at the time of the crash. I have investigators already working on it. I can't afford investigators. You're not paying. Sophia's family is covering all costs. Consider it an investment in justice." Over the next 2 weeks, Eduardo's team worked around the clock. They found a traffic camera half a mile from the crash site that showed Diane's car following Heather's car aggressively. They found surveillance footage from a warehouse that partially showed the collision, enough to corroborate that Diane's car made contact first. They pulled cell phone records, showing that Diane had been tracking Heather's location using a surveillance app. Eduardo filed new motions, demanding the suppression ruling be reconsidered in light of new evidence. The judge agreed to another hearing. This hearing was different. Eduardo presented a case so airtight that even Marcus Brennan seemed rattled. The judge reversed her previous ruling. The dashcam footage was back in, and the new evidence Eduardo found was also admissible. Based on these findings, the judge said, "I'm dismissing the attempted murder charges against Mr. Morrison. Detective Reyes, I'm ordering you to investigate Diane Morrison for assault with a deadly vehicle and conspiracy." Diane, sitting next to Brennan in the courtroom, went pale. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "I'm ordering a full review of the fraud case. Mr. Silva, you've presented compelling evidence that Mr. Morrison is a victim, not a perpetrator. The prosecutor's office will reassess all charges within 30 days. I was released that afternoon. Not exonerated yet, but free on my own recognizance. Amanda Burke hugged me on the courthouse steps. I've never seen anything like that. Eduardo is incredible. He is, I agreed. William and Sophia took me to dinner that night at a nice restaurant downtown. Sophia ordered expensive wine, and we toasted to the truth finally coming out. What happens now? I asked Eduardo. Now we go on offense. The documents I have prove your family committed fraud. The evidence we gathered proves Diane tried to kill a witness. We're building a criminal case, and I'm coordinating with federal prosecutors. Your mother and sister are going to prison, and Marcus Brennan is going down with them. Brennan? He knew about the fraud from the beginning. I found emails he sent 2 years ago, advising your mother and sister on how to set up the shell companies and false documentation. He's been complicit in a criminal conspiracy. The State Bar Association will disbar him, and he'll face charges himself. I could hardly believe it. After weeks of losing, we were finally winning. But that night, lying in the hotel bed William had gotten for me, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Heather, still in the hospital in a medically induced coma. The doctors said she had severe head trauma. They didn't know if she'd wake up, if she'd have brain damage, if she'd remember anything. She'd tried to help me, and she'd almost died for it. That guilt would stay with me forever. The next morning, Eduardo called me. We have a problem. Diane's gone. She didn't show up for a scheduled meeting with detectives. Her apartment is empty. Her car is missing. We think she's fleeing. Where would she go? Unknown. But we've alerted the FBI. If she crosses state lines, it becomes federal. They'll find her. Patricia, my mother, was arrested that afternoon. Detectives showed up at her house with a warrant, charged her with multiple counts of fraud, conspiracy, and identity theft. Her bail was set at $200,000. She couldn't pay. She went to jail. Marcus Brennan was arrested 3 days later. The State Bar Association suspended his license pending investigation. His firm fired him immediately, trying to distance themselves from the scandal. Diane was found a week later in Arizona, trying to board a flight to Mexico. The FBI arrested her at the airport. She was extradited back to Oregon and charged with fraud, conspiracy, attempted murder, and fleeing to avoid prosecution. The trial took 6 months to prepare. Eduardo worked with federal prosecutors to build an airtight case. They had documents, emails, bank records, testimony from forensic accountants. Everything pointed to a years-long conspiracy to defraud me out of millions of dollars. Heather woke up from her coma 3 weeks before the trial started. She had memory issues at first, but slowly her memories returned. She remembered everything: the crash, Diane running her off the road, the plan to frame me. She agreed to testify. Eduardo worked with her to prepare her for cross-examination. Brennan tried to get the charges against him dismissed, claiming he'd been misled by his clients. But the emails Eduardo found showed he'd been complicit from the start. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The jury deliberated for 2 days. They found Patricia guilty on all counts: fraud, conspiracy, identity theft, tax evasion, 8 years in federal prison. They found Diane guilty on even more counts: all the fraud charges plus attempted murder, assault with a deadly vehicle, obstruction of justice. 15 years in federal prison. Marcus Brennan was convicted of conspiracy to commit fraud and obstruction of justice. He was sentenced to 5 years and permanently disbarred. The civil case took longer. Eduardo helped me sue for damages. The court ordered Patricia and Diane to repay all stolen funds plus punitive damages. Their assets were seized. Patricia's house in Beaverton sold at auction for $430,000. Diane's savings accounts, her car, her furniture, everything went to pay the judgment. After legal fees, IRS settlements, and Eduardo's costs, which Sophia's family covered, I recovered about $1.3 million. It wasn't the full $2.3 million that should have been there, but it was enough. More than enough. William and I rebuilt our relationship over those months. He officially divorced from Sophia's family situation and remarried her properly after working through the trust fund issues. She became like a grandmother to me, warm and supportive. Gary offered me my job back, but I declined. I used some of the recovered money to start my own electrical contracting business, Morrison Electrical Services. I hired 5 employees within the first year, paying them fairly and treating them with respect. I bought a modest house in southeast Portland. Nothing fancy, just a 3-bedroom bungalow with a yard. It was mine, really mine. Tyler tried to apologize about a year after the trial. Showed up at my business one day, hat in hand, saying he'd been scared, that Diane had threatened him. I didn't forgive him. Some betrayals cut too deep. I told him to leave and never come back. Heather recovered fully from her injuries. She served 6 months in jail for her role in the initial fraud, a plea deal Eduardo negotiated. I visited her every week, bringing books and letters. We talked through the glass partition about second chances and redemption. When she was released, I helped her find a job as an accountant at a nonprofit. We weren't together romantically, never would be, but we'd become friends. Real friends this time. 3 months before the trial concluded, there was a moment when everything almost fell apart again. I need to tell you about that, because it's important to understand how close I came to losing everything, even after Eduardo had joined the fight. The prosecutor handling the case, a woman named Jennifer Walsh, called Eduardo and me into her office. She looked stressed, exhausted. "We have a problem," she said without preamble. "What kind of problem?" Eduardo asked. Marcus Brennan filed a motion to dismiss, based on procedural errors in how evidence was collected. He's arguing that the documents Sofia brought from Portugal weren't properly authenticated through the correct international legal channels. He's also challenging the traffic camera footage on privacy grounds. And he's demanding a change of venue, claiming his clients can't get a fair trial in Portland because of media coverage. "Those are standard defense tactics," Eduardo said. "Nuisance motions. Maybe, but Judge Crawford is taking them seriously. She's scheduled a hearing for next week. If she grants any of these motions, particularly the evidence suppression, our case falls apart. Patricia and Diane could walk." I felt sick. After everything, they might still get away with it? "It's possible," Walsh admitted. "Brennan is throwing everything at the wall, hoping something sticks. And Judge Crawford is very concerned about defendants' rights. She's ruled in favor of the defense before in similar situations." "So what do?" I asked. "We fight. But I need you both to be prepared for the possibility that we might lose this case." Eduardo spent the next week preparing counterarguments. He flew in experts on international law to testify about the Portuguese documents. He brought in privacy law specialists to defend the traffic camera footage. He worked 18-hour days, barely sleeping. The hearing was brutal. Marcus Brennan was at his best, eloquent and persuasive. He painted Patricia and Diane as victims of an overzealous prosecution. He described me as a vindictive grandson, trying to punish his family for imagined slights. He made Eduardo seem like a foreigner, trying to impose European legal standards on American courts. Judge Crawford seemed sympathetic to Brennan's arguments. Several times during the hearing, she nodded at points he made. She asked tough questions of Eduardo and Walsh. At the end of the day-long hearing, she said she'd issue a ruling within 48 hours. Those 2 days were agony. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. William and Sophia tried to reassure me, but even they seemed worried. Eduardo called me on the second evening. The ruling came through. Judge Crawford denied all of Brennan's motions. Everything stands. The trial proceeds as scheduled. I almost collapsed with relief. Why did she deny them? Her written opinion is scathing. She says Brennan's motions were frivolous, designed to waste the court's time. She's sanctioning him for filing bad faith motions. She's also ordering him to pay the prosecution's legal fees for defending against the motions. It's a complete victory. So, we're safe? As safe as we can be. But Kenneth, I need you to understand something. Trials are unpredictable. We have a strong case, the strongest I've ever worked on. But juries are human. They can be swayed by emotion, by sympathy, by a charismatic defense attorney. Nothing is guaranteed until the verdict comes in. I understand. Good. Now get some rest. We have a lot of work ahead. The next 3 months leading to trial were a blur of depositions, witness preparation, and strategy sessions. Eduardo was meticulous, preparing for every possible defense tactic. He anticipated Brennan's arguments and built counter-arguments. He interviewed dozens of potential witnesses, selecting the ones who would be most credible on the stand. Heather was the wild card. She'd woken from her coma with significant memory loss. The doctor said it might be permanent. For weeks she couldn't remember anything about the fraud or the crash. She recognized me but couldn't recall our relationship or why she'd wanted to help me. Eduardo worked with neurologists and memory specialists to help her recover. Slowly, fragments started coming back, then more, then floods of memory. 3 weeks before trial, she remembered everything. "I can testify," she told Eduardo and me during a preparation session. "I remember the whole thing. Every detail." "Are you sure?" Eduardo asked. "Brennan will cross-examine you aggressively. He'll try to discredit you, suggest your memories aren't reliable because of the brain injury. Let him try. I know what happened. I know what I did. And I'm going to tell the truth, no matter what it costs me." She was as good as her word. On the stand, she was calm, clear, and credible. She admitted her role in the initial fraud, expressed genuine remorse, and described in detail how Diane had run her off the road. Brennan tried to shake her on cross-examination, but she didn't waver. The jury believed her. I could see it in their faces. Patricia testified in her own defense. A huge mistake. Eduardo destroyed her on cross-examination, pointing out inconsistencies in her story, showing her the bank records that proved she'd spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on luxury vacations and shopping, while claiming she was barely surviving financially. Diane didn't testify. Brennan advised her against it, probably because he knew Eduardo would eviscerate her. When the verdicts came in, guilty on all counts for both of them, I felt something break inside me. Not sadness, not anger, just a profound sense of exhaustion. It was over. Finally over. The sentencing hearing was weeks later. Patricia broke down crying, begging the judge for mercy. Diane remained stoic, silent. The judge showed no sympathy. "You violated the trust of your family," she said to Patricia. "You stole from your own son. You destroyed his life for your own greed. The court has no tolerance for this kind of betrayal." 8 years in federal prison. To Diane. "You went even further. You attempted to murder a witness. You tried to frame your brother for crimes he didn't commit. You showed no remorse, no conscience." 15 years in federal prison. Marcus Brennan got 5 years in disbarment. His legal career was over, his reputation destroyed. He'd be a cautionary tale in law schools for years to come. The months after the trial felt surreal, like waking from a nightmare that had lasted years instead of months. I kept expecting something else to go wrong, another trap to spring, another betrayal to surface. But slowly, cautiously, I started to believe that maybe, just maybe, I was actually safe now. The civil case wrapped up faster than expected. Eduardo's team had so thoroughly documented every stolen dollar that Patricia's and Diane's attorneys advised them to settle rather than fight. The court ordered them to repay $1.8 million plus another $500,000 in punitive damages. Of course, they didn't have $2.3 million. Most of it had been spent on vacations, cars, clothes, legal fees. But the court seized what assets they did have. Patricia's house in Beaverton sold for $430,000. Her car, her jewelry, her furniture, everything went at auction. Diane's savings account had $87,000. Her car sold for $32,000. Her retirement account, which she couldn't touch in prison anyway, was garnished. In total, I recovered about $1.3 million after all the legal fees, IRS settlements, and costs. It wasn't everything, but it was enough to change my life completely. The IRS case was another battle. Eduardo worked with tax attorneys to prove I'd never actually received the money, that Patricia and Diane had fraudulently filed returns in my name. It took 14 months of negotiations, but eventually, the IRS agreed to drop the penalties and most of the back taxes. I ended up owing about $42,000, which I paid in a lump sum from the settlement money. William stayed in Portland through the entire trial. Sophia joined him after a month, and they rented an apartment downtown. I had dinner with them every Sunday, and slowly, we built the relationship we'd never had when I was growing up. William told me stories about his life, his business, the reasons he'd faked his death. Sophia talked about Portugal, about her family, about the textile business her father had built from nothing. "We'd like you to visit," Sophia said one Sunday over dessert. "Come to Portugal. Stay with us for a few weeks. See where we live." "I'd like that," I said, and I meant it. I went that summer. Portugal was beautiful, warm, ancient. Sophia's family welcomed me like I'd always been part of them. Her brother, a jovial man named Carlos, took me to his textile factory and showed me how they made fabric. Her sister, Maria, taught me to cook traditional Portuguese dishes. One evening, sitting on William's terrace overlooking the Douro River, he handed me a glass of port wine and said, "I'm proud of you, Kenneth. The way you fought, the way you never gave up. Even when everyone told you to quit, you kept going. That takes real strength." "I almost didn't make it," I admitted. "There were moments when I wanted to give up, when I thought prison would be easier than fighting. But you didn't give up. That's what matters." "I had help. You, Sophia, Eduardo. Without you, I'd be in prison right now." "Maybe. But you gave us something to work with. You documented everything. You stayed honest, even when lying would have been easier. You trusted the system even when the system was failing you. That integrity is what saved you in the end." We sat in silence for a while, watching the sun set over the river. It was peaceful. For the first time in years, I felt truly calm. When I returned to Portland, I used some of the settlement money to start my business, Morrison Electrical Services. I rented a small office in Southeast Portland, bought a work van, and hired my first employee, a kid named Danny, who reminded me of myself at 22. Broke, hard-working, desperate for a chance. "I can't pay you a lot to start," I told him. $16 an hour. "But if the business grows, you grow with it. Fair wages, honest work, respect. That's how we operate." "Sounds good to me, Mr. Morrison. Call me Kenneth. We're a team here, not a hierarchy." Within 6 months, I had 5 employees. Within a year, we'd landed contracts with 3 major property management companies. The business grew steadily, sustainably. I paid my people well, offered health insurance, gave bonuses when we had good quarters. I remembered what it felt like to struggle, to be exploited, to work for bosses who didn't value their employees. I wasn't going to be that kind of boss. I bought a house in Southeast Portland, a modest 3-bedroom bungalow with a backyard and a garage. It cost $270,000, which seemed insane, but it was mine. I owned it outright, no mortgage. I planted a garden, fixed up the porch, painted the walls colors I actually liked. Tyler showed up at my office one day about a year after the trial ended. He stood in the doorway looking nervous, holding his baseball cap in his hands. "Kenneth, can we talk?" "There's nothing to say, Tyler. I need you to know I'm sorry. Diane threatened me. Said she'd ruin my life if I didn't cooperate. I was scared. You lied about me. You told police I'd talked about gambling and scamming my family. You helped frame me for crimes I didn't commit. I know. I was wrong. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't fix what you did. You were my best friend, Tyler. I trusted you. And you sold me out for what? What did she pay you?" He looked at the floor. $5,000. You valued our friendship at $5,000. I needed the money. My wife was pregnant. We had medical bills. I wasn't thinking straight. You had a choice. You chose wrong. Now you have to live with that. Can't you forgive me? Please? I thought about it. Really thought about it. Part of me wanted to forgive him, to rebuild that friendship. But a larger part remembered sitting in that jail cell, knowing my best friend had lied about me, feeling completely alone. Some betrayals cut too deep to heal. "No," I said. "I can't. I need you to leave now." He started to say something, then stopped, nodded, put his hat back on, and walked out. I never saw him again. Heather's recovery took longer. She had some permanent memory issues, occasional headaches, problems with balance. But she was alive, functional, determined. She served her 6-month sentence without complaint, and I visited her every single week. We'd talk through the glass partition about books, about Portland, about the future. "Why do you keep coming?" she asked me once. "I don't deserve your kindness. Not after what I did. Because you made it right. You could have stayed silent, saved yourself, let me go to prison. But you didn't. You risked your life to help me. That takes courage. I almost got you killed. Diane ran me off the road because of the evidence I stole. You almost got yourself killed. And you did it to save me. I'll never forget that." When she was released, I helped her find an apartment, co-signed her lease because her credit was destroyed. I helped her get a job as an accountant at a non-profit that helped homeless families. The director, a woman named Sharon, was willing to hire someone with a record if they came recommended. "You're vouching for her?" Sharon asked me. "I am. She made mistakes, but she's paid for them. She deserves a second chance." Heather excelled at that job. Within a year, she was managing their entire accounting department. We stayed friends, real friends this time. We got coffee every few weeks, talked about work and life and Portland. There was no romance between us, never would be. But there was something better: mutual respect, trust, understanding. Christmas came around again. 2 years after William had showed up on my mother's porch with that ledger, I decided to host dinner at my house. I invited William and Sophia, Eduardo and his wife Carmen, Heather, Danny and his girlfriend, a few other employees from the business. We cooked together, laughed together, told stories. Eduardo got tipsy on wine and started singing Portuguese folk songs. Sophia taught us a traditional dance. William told embarrassing stories about my father from when they were young. It was loud, chaotic, joyful. At one point, I stepped out onto the back porch to catch my breath. The night was cold, clear, stars visible despite the city lights. William came out and stood beside me. "This is good, Kenneth. What you've built here. The business, the friendships, this life. You should be proud." I am. But I think about what I lost sometimes. My mother's in prison. My sister's in prison. My best friend betrayed me. I'll never get those relationships back. No, you won't. But you've built new ones. Better ones. These people in your house right now, they're your real family. Not because of blood, but because of choice. That's more valuable. Do you ever regret coming back? You lost Sophia's trust for a while. Almost lost your marriage. Got dragged into this whole mess. He thought about it for a long moment. "No, I don't regret it. I got to know my grandson. I got to help right a terrible wrong. And I learned that family isn't always worth saving. But justice always is. You deserve justice. And we got it. That's worth any price." We went back inside. Heather was teaching Eduardo's wife how to make s'mores in my fireplace. Danny was showing Sophia photos of the wiring job we'd completed that week. Everyone was talking over each other, happy, comfortable. I raised my glass. "Can I say something?" The room quieted down. 2 years ago, I had nothing. I was broke, alone, betrayed by everyone I thought I could trust. I was ready to give up. But some of you wouldn't let me. William, you came back from the dead to help me. Sophia, you flew across an ocean to support someone you'd never met. Eduardo, you fought for me when you had no reason to. Heather, you risked everything to tell the truth. And all of you here tonight, you've become my family. Not the family I was born into, but the family I chose. The family that chose me back. So thank you. Thank you for not giving up on me when it would have been easier to walk away." Sophia wiped tears from her eyes. Eduardo raised his glass. Everyone toasted. Later that night, after everyone had gone home and I was cleaning up, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, old paranoia kicking in. But something made me pick up. "Hello? Kenneth Morrison." A man's voice. Professional. Unfamiliar. Speaking. My name is James Crawford. I served time with your mother at the federal prison in Sheridan. She asked me to call you when I was released. My stomach tightened. What does she want? She wanted me to tell you she's sorry. She knows sorry doesn't fix anything, but she wanted you to know. She also wanted me to tell you that Diane isn't sorry. Diane blames you for everything. Says you destroyed the family. So your mother wants you to be careful when Diane gets out in 13 years. She thinks Diane might try something. Tell my mother I don't want her apologies. And tell her if she's really sorry, she'll stay out of my life when she's released. I'll pass that along. Take care of yourself, Kenneth. He hung up. I stood there holding the phone, thinking about my mother in prison, about Diane planning revenge. Part of me wanted to be afraid, but a larger part knew I'd survived worse. If they came for me again, I'd fight again, and I'd win again. Because I'd learned something through all of this. The world will try to break you. People you trust will betray you. Systems will fail you. There will be moments when giving up seems easier than fighting. But if you hold on to the truth, if you refuse to surrender your integrity even when it seems pointless, if you surround yourself with good people and fight for one more day when you have nothing left, that's when everything changes. Justice isn't quick. It isn't easy. It isn't guaranteed. But it's worth fighting for. And sometimes, the family that saves you isn't the one you were born into. It's the one you build from the people who show up when you need them most, who fight for you when you can't fight for yourself, who believe in you when everyone else calls you a liar. Those are the people worth keeping. Those are the relationships worth nurturing. I finished cleaning up the kitchen, locked the doors, and went to bed in my own house, in my own bed, with my own business cards on the nightstand that read Kenneth Morrison, owner, Morrison, Electrical Services. I'd been to hell and back, but I'd made it, and I was going to be okay. Better than okay. I was going to thrive. Before I finish this story, I want to ask you something. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely? How did you handle it? Did you fight back, or did you walk away? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story meant something to you, if it reminded you that fighting for the truth is always worth it, even when the odds seem impossible, please hit that like button. It helps more people find this story, and maybe someone out there needs to hear it right now. And if you want to hear more stories about ordinary people facing extraordinary challenges, about justice, redemption, and the power of choosing the right family, make sure you subscribe to this channel. We share new stories every week. Finally, if you know someone who's going through a difficult time, someone who's being falsely accused or betrayed by people they trusted, please share this story with them. Let them know they're not alone. Let them know that even when everything seems lost, there's always hope if you refuse to give up. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. I hope you found something in this journey that resonates with you, something that reminds you of your own strength. Take care of yourselves. Choose your family wisely, and never ever give up on the truth. Until next time.